This thing on?
What is up, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of The Cut. I'm your host, Christian Williams, and I am here, as always, with Randy Hall. Randy, how are you, man?
Doing good. Delayed recording of this after some unfortunate stuff last night, and then I'm fucking exhausted, spending most of my day at a physical for my new job. So yeah, I'm definitely drinking an energy drink and ready for this.
Did they put you through a combine while you were there?
No, I think that'd have been easier.
Yeah, I believe that. Yes, that is all very true, but also late recording and simultaneously early recording. So if you guys are in the chat, like I said, I'll try to hop on here, but this is a pre-recorded show, so we won't be responding. But please do, interact. I'll try to hop on and interact in real time as that happens. So we're here to talk about the New Orleans Saints this time, since the big news of the Saints trade with the Eagles broke this week. We kind of pivoted. I said, let's just scrap the Friday Fix and do a mock. And Randy goes, well, we can just do the Saints. I said, you are correct. And we just did the Eagles a couple weeks ago, so that one's not really scrapped because I think a lot of the same premises are there. But now we get to talk about the Saints, who we'll talk about the trade in a second. But if this is your first Friday Fix, we are going to talk through the GM and coaching situation, the current cap situation, what free agents they've brought in, what free agents we would continue to bring in since they do have some cap space left, and then also go through a 7-round mock. This will be our second week of 7 rounds. So first, general manager and coaching situation. Randy, talk to me about Mickey Loomis.
All right, Mickey Loomis, the GM and executive vice president, has held both since 2002. I think I did see slightly that maybe he's not the EVP anymore on my last check. That could be true, but just in case, just putting it out there. Obviously, since he's been with the team since 2002, he was around for the Super Bowl win. He was also around for Bountygate, which he didn't shut down, even though he was told to by the owner, or he couldn't shut it down. The jury's still a little bit up on that. And he was suspended 8 games for that. But besides that, he's pretty much only worked for 2 teams. He was hired by the Saints, or by the Seahawks in 1983, and worked as a VP and part of finance, and then executive vice president until he became the Saints director of football in 2000. So he's been pretty loyal to 2 teams, and honestly, he's had a pretty good history. It's just there's a one shining moment and one little blemish there, but that's the tale of Mickey Loomis for the most part. Not a ton of success for the Saints, and you could argue that a lot of the success came from Sean Payton, and maybe not him though. So we'll see, but obviously I'm sure he was instrumental in bringing in Drew Brees, so good on him. And they've been I would say they've been relatively good drafters over the last decade or so.
I did want to bring up, so Terry Fontenot, the current Falcons GM, he was very high up. I believe he was the assistant GM to Mickey Loomis when he was with the Saints, and then he since left. This will be his second year with the Falcons, and so I wonder how much there's rumors that a lot of the picks were made by Terry Fontenot, and because he was, I think he was actually the director of college scouting, and so he kind of drove that. We'll see what it looks like without him there over the next couple of years. I think they're still going to be good drafters, though.
I don't even recall who they drafted first. Oh, didn't they get Peyton? Right.
Yes.
A little bit overdrafting an edge rusher last year
in the first.
Yeah.
So, which I don't even know how he played last year off the top of my head. I I don't think he saw the field a whole lot because
He's their third string edge regardless. So,
right.
or not third string, third edge.
Yeah.
So
Second string. But yeah, so we're gonna kind of find out how much was Terry Fontenot and how much was Mickey Loomis. But we need to talk about the coaching situation because that is the one thing that is different this year. And you have some familiarity with this guy as he's a former Raiders head coach. So talk to me about Dennis Allen.
Yeah, so I mean, he's been coaching in the NFL for 21 years. Has been with Sean Payton for the last 12 seasons. Started in the NFL as a Falcons defensive assistant coach and quality control coach in 2000. 2006 became the Saints assistant D-line coach and then secondary coach during a 4-year span there. Broncos defensive coordinator in 2011. Raiders head coach from 2012 to 2014. This is his only other head coaching stint, and he was 11-37. Definitely not the pinnacle of coaching or the Raiders coaching cycle. But they didn't have the best quarterbacks during this as well, so give them some leniency there. And then became the Saints interim defensive coordinator and senior defensive assistant coach in 2015 after he was fired from the Raiders. And then he's been the DC since 2016 for the Saints. Now, obviously, the head coach after the retiring of Sean Payton and them wanting to keep in house, even though I think I don't know if that's the best move. I think there was better coaches out there for this position, but this is what they want. They wanted to keep it close knit and keep the same kind of group around. We'll see. This could be a little bit different looking of an offense now with a defensive coordinator as head coach instead of an offensive guru of sorts in Payton. So I don't think he's a bad coach by any means. Like obviously his defenses have been pretty good over the years. So I would expect them to get the most out of the defense, even if they're still kind of rebuilding. Certain parts, they really don't have massive holes in the defense, in my opinion.
No, I don't think so either. And I will say, I mean, Dennis Allen, the actual scheme that he runs is one of the best in the NFL. What I'm curious to see, so they retained Pete Carmichael, who was the offensive coordinator under Sean Payton. So he should be able to implement similar schemes. I know Payton was the play caller. I think the whole time. I don't think he ever gave up play calling, right?
No, for sure he didn't.
So I assume that Carmichael will now call plays for the offense, and Allen, I think, is going to retain a lot of control over the defense. So I expect that there will be some consistency, but I agree. I don't think he was the best candidate for the head coaching job, but he's there, and that's what they're working with now. And I think that the idea was to just maintain the status quo and kind of just continue building. So
yeah, I will say there's an argument to be made that if James doesn't get hurt last year, they probably make the playoffs, or at least are in that last week of contention, because they played relatively well early, and we both know that James played pretty well after about a week or so. It took him to kind of get back into rolling, but he started to come on down the stretch, and they're with what they have in this defense. If Allen can retain a lot of the power, they really just a few tune-ups away from at least being a contender in the playoffs.
I mean, I agree with that, I guess. And that brings us to the state of the team. So I think the reason they wanted to maintain status quo is because they are kind of in cap hell for the next 2 years. They, this year they actually cleared the books. They are very good at restructuring contracts and structuring them in ways that are easy to move money around and then create cap space. But as of right now, they have negative $33 million on the books for next year. So obviously they're going to need to continue pushing money out and kind of restructuring in that way.
Yeah, and that's also in theory of the salary cap not going up, which it will. So it will be a little bit better, but they will be in the negative. But I highly doubt it goes up 35 million. There's usually a hike, but definitely not that much. Even if it is, they're still going to be up against the cap. So, but they do have 79 million already for 2024 with the cap this year, which it clearly won't be that in 2024. So they are looking better in the future. They just need to kind of get through these next 2 years of cap and just minimize the damage there.
Yeah, I agree there. So let's just kind of roll into it. We've kind of talked about that they're still a pretty good team, and they don't have too many holes. We'll talk about some weaknesses as we get deeper into this episode, but their current cap situation, Randy, hit us with that, and then we'll talk about their offseason, which has been really, really busy.
Yeah, all right. They are just over 19.5 million, $19,511,822. They've been visiting with different people, and I know they've been in contention and talks for different like veteran receivers. I know Honey Badger visited this week, and he himself kind of came out and said he wants to play for the Saints, but he's not going to take a hometown discount. But he also kind of told the reporters they don't really need me, but it'd be fun to play here with those guys. And they don't necessarily need him because they do have 2 starting safeties on the roster. And while obviously Honey Badger's probably better than both of them, I would say it does put you in some weird spaces and where you're going to put everyone. And you're already paying those people. So we'll see what they do. I think they probably bring in at least one more vet to this roster and maybe a couple more roster fillers, but free agency is drying up. So we'll see.
This is true. And so let's first talk about the big trade, because that's definitely shaping what we're about to do with their 7-round mock, and then also, what their mindset has been. So they received the 16th overall pick, the 19th overall pick, and the 194th pick this year from the Eagles for pick 18, 101, and 237. And then also gave up a 2023 first and a 2024 second. Massive, massive deal to add a second first rounder this year. That's obviously a swap of 6 and 7s, whatever. That's cool. They only came up, about 40 spots, which I guess is kind of significant, but giving up the 2023 first is kind of massive in my eyes. Maybe they looked at their cap situation for next year and said, we can't pay that rookie anyway. So
could be true.
Now, I know we're going to get into that, so I don't want to dive too deep, but what do you think the reason for this trade was?
Well,
there are a couple options, right?
There's a few options, yeah. We kind of covered them already. So the first option out there is this is a building block, and this is the tree that you need to get in front of the Panthers at 6 to go to 5, 4, and pick the quarterback of your future. Because obviously, I think at this point, it's almost an inevitability that the Panthers are either picking Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett. And I think they are truly deciding between the two from what we're hearing about the building. And if somehow both were gone, I think they would take like Charles Cross, because that's the tackle they're high on, it seems. But so clearly, if you want Malik Willis, or that's the guy you peg as the top of the class, or potential-wise, which is kind of what it seems like everyone's doing, you have to move up ahead of them, plain and simple. And 16 and 19 can do that. And we'll kind of explore that later. But the other thing is, if this is just truly you want to get a tackle to replace Teron Armstead and a shot at a quarterback still that you like here at 19, you get in front of the Chargers at 17, who need a right tackle, and you take the best tackle on the board at 16. Obviously, Chargers could trade up, blah, blah, blah. You never really know what's going to happen. So that would be the ideal situation there. Then hopefully Desmond Ridder, Matt Corral, Sam Howell, whoever you fancy, even Kenny Pickett are there at 19. You're still ahead of the Steelers at that point, so you still could make that quarterback selection there. And then the other option is you see the money you have this year, you see the little money you have next year, you already traded your first, so that saves some money. You think you're a contender with Jameis, who they do believe in, at least to some extent, and you want to get the tackle, you want to get a receiver, you want to get a corner, you want to get as much talent as possible on this roster from a youth standpoint, which is not something they've had over the last couple of years, where they've had to kind of shed big veteran contracts to just get under the cap. This is kind of a retooling of sort in that regard, where you could legitimately get two top tier blue chip prospects at 16 and 19 and fill up two big holes.
You kind of nailed down what I think the options are. You know, I think there is an option now to move back as well if they wanted. I think it gives them flexibility, and I think
So that's where the other teams trading up comes into play. I think they're for sure sitting at 16 and figured if they're sitting with these two picks at 16, they're picking one of their needs, but they may move back from 19 again to a team like the Packers or the Chiefs that want to get up and get a receiver instead, kind of thing. But again, this is just how the board falls and how the trades happen. But that's the only way I see them truly trading back, because otherwise this is a weird move.
Yeah, it would be really funny to me, though, if the Eagles then turned around and sniped them with the pick at 19, since they now hold the 18th pick. But
they picked both the Eagles picks were right before the Saints.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, the Eagles have 15 and 18, and Saints have 16 and 19. That's fun. I don't know why that's the case, but especially when they both kind of need the same position, one in particular.
Tackle.
Yeah, I could still make an argument that the Eagles could take one. They don't need one though, necessarily. All right, let's walk through some of the offseason moves. Free agency for the Saints has been very, very busy.
Yeah, so they have re-signed a lot of people, which is something we don't get to say about the Saints most years. Starting off, they re-signed Jameis Winston, 2 years, $28 million, but in reality, they really could get out of the contract next year pretty free and clear, which brings up the quarterback debate for this draft.
But really quickly, before we move into more, I do think giving him $14 million a year is significant, because that is, to me, that's not a bridge quarterback deal. That's you're our starter, but we still want to maintain flexibility past next year,
I'm pretty positive that Mariota got damn near the same contract, and we don't feel the same way about him. Just saying.
He did not. He got less than that.
And Mitch has damn near close too. They're both.
Look it up. Mariota's only getting $6 million in guaranteed money over the 2 years, with an out.
Yeah, I don't know about Jameis's guaranteed either, but
so Mariota's is 9 per year on average, and Trubisky is
2 years, 18.
Yeah, it looks like they came down on it though, and it was overreported. So his is actually 2 years, 14, so $7 million. He got less than Mariota, but it can go up to 27. So
Jameis?
No. Trubisky. Trubisky's is only $7 million per year, and so Jameis got double Trubisky money, is what I'm saying.
So basically, my point being, but again, they have an out next year. So I think all three teams are literally giving these three a shot, and then they do get handsomely rewarded if they work out, but they're not hands tied behind their back for these three guys. So that's why, again, I was Jameis's deal. I also thought they were going to stick at 18 and pick whatever best case scenario fell, maybe trade up and get a tackle, trade up, get a receiver. Then this happened, and it kind of throws off all the plans. And the biggest thing with that is we're at the time now from March till the draft where coaches are now looking at the film, because the free agency's done. They're looking at the boards now. They're creating the boards with the war room. And this is the type of stuff we get where teams fall in love with players and ask, why do we have a background first round grade on this guy when he's clearly a god? Stuff like that. And that's how teams fall in love with players. And we get to hear more stuff and see more moves to kind of cover that. So that's why I think the trade kind of went down. But to finish off all these free agencies, Tre'Quan Smith re-signed 2 years, $6 million. They re-signed Ethan Greenridge for 1 year something. Re-signed Carl Granderson for 2 years something. Re-signed PJ Williams 1 year something. Sorry, a lot of these contracts just don't give us information right now. Re-signed Forrest Lamp 1 year, $1 million. Great contract for that. Brought in Marcus May 3 years, 28.5. So the biggest contract here, and that's obviously to be your starting safety, and replace Williams best you can. Brought in Daniel Sorensen to also help with that 1 year, 1.25 as a rotational guy. Brought in Andy Dalton for a max of $6 million as their backup and trade bait at the deadline. Tendered Shy Tuttle, who's a starting D tackle for them. Brought in Catavia Street to play there as well. Jaleel Johnson brought in for something. Again, both these guys given no information. They brought in Justin Evans to be a rotational guy at safety, a guy that's been injured since he's been drafted, but could have some upside. Brought in Taco Charlton to be a rotational edge rusher, and brought in JP Holtz to be their
tight end 7.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what JP Holtz played for a second there. I almost said punter, and I was like, that's wrong.
There's definitely a punter with a 2 initial J
100%.
name. I know that. That's definitely a punter's name. But yeah, so the signing of JP Holtz is strange to me because they already have 18 tight ends on the roster. But I do like a lot of these moves. I like Lamp being your kind of rotational interior offensive lineman. I think he got cut by the Chargers, I believe, last year, and then the Saints picked him up and then ended up retaining him, which is nice. The May contract felt a little expensive. I know May's been good, but I don't know. I guess 3 years, 28 isn't a whole lot, and they got cheaper compared to the Marcus Williams contract that the Ravens dished out.
5 years, $70 million.
Yeah, so I guess it's not that expensive.
Yeah,
but
it's a downgrade, but it's not a massive downgrade, and it's cheaper. So basically, they brought back Traquan Smith and James Winston, who are the big ones on the offensive side of the ball. Forrest Lamp's a good rotational guy. Having Andy Dalton is nice, but again, with this move now to almost absurdly draft a quarterback, I mean, there's literally one scenario where they're not drafting a quarterback here. It very well could be the scenario. I'm not saying that, but this Andy Dalton contract seems weird. But it's also smart by them because worst case, you can get a 5th round pick back next year for Andy Dalton at the deadline to replace somebody or back up somebody. It's not really going to hurt them any if they do draft a quarterback. And then they've gotten a lot. I mean, PJ Williams is obviously a rotational starter. That's huge. And Tuttle being tendered is smart by them. But the rest of them are just great depth signings, which makes it seem like they probably won't do much more. But they've also signed like Taco this last week. So it doesn't seem like they're necessarily done.
Yes. So some key free agents that they have remaining. Quan Alexander, who played pretty poorly for them last year. I don't think they'll look at retaining him.
Yeah. So Quan was coming off injury, and then he didn't play to start the year. And it looked like he was coming off an injury, I think is the best way to describe it. But honestly, if they wanted to pay him, I don't know if he's willing to take the money they're offering. But he also did this last year where he didn't sign until very late in the year, and he signed for basically no money. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I guess he's betting on himself. He could also just be making sure that he's healthy. But also, Dwayne Washington, Jeff Heath, Kenny Stills, Jordan Mills, James Carpenter, Ken Crawley, Caleb Beninoke. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Christian Ringo, Jalen Holmes, and then they've already lost. Obviously, we talked about the 2 big ones, Teron Armstead and Marcus Williams. But they also lost Trevor Siemian, Ty Montgomery, and Garrett Griffin.
Yeah, I don't see
Ty Montgomery sign.
Patriots.
He talked about it. Did he?
Believe so.
Well, that's intriguing. I knew they lost him, but he wasn't like those 3 aren't really impactful. The other 2 are massive, massive losses.
Oh, so. These are these are the stalwarts of your team. Teron Armstead and Marcus Williams, that's enormous to lose. Quan Alexander is the only one of these guys I think they even consider bringing back, really. Maybe Kenny Stills is a depth receiver, but he didn't really do much last year. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fair to assume that they don't want to bring back Kenny Stills because they chose to bring back Traquan Smith. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's walk through some of their team needs before we get into our mock drafts, and we approach the mock drafts vastly differently. So,
Yeah. So team needs offensive tackle, left tackle. They had to replace Terron Armstead. They have James Hurst starting right now. Not worth it. So, that's the biggest need for me is left tackle. Wide receiver, they still have a massive need. Obviously, at this point, Michael Thomas has had a year and a half of football. He's either not playing for the Saints or he's back to 100%. I don't know which one it is, but he should be back. And then your starters already being Michael Thomas, Traquan Smith, Marquez Callaway. It's a very underwhelming trio. Traquan and Callaway didn't do what they could have done last year. I mean, we've had some flashes here and there, but nothing really good. So I think both of them are incredibly replaceable. And at this point, Michael Thomas could be on the way out, but we'll see.
yeah.
I would think I believe he's been tweeting good things about them signing people in this offseason. So I think he's in better spirits.
Yeah. So I did want to pause here because I know I didn't give them any more free agents. But I know you think that they're still in the market for some. So since we're talking about wide receivers, who'd you give them?
Yeah, so I think they're in the market to and this probably spells what I'm doing in the mock, but to bring in another receiver of help just in case they can't get a receiver until later to bolster, and he might not be an instant impact that they need. So I have them bringing in AJ Green. I think Emmanuel Sanders is an obvious signing as well, but we kind of talked about him last week. So I had them bringing in AJ Green, 1 year, $7 million. They're probably paying more than anyone else will, and he would actually be a great counterpart to what they have in this receiver room, to where he can go deep still, but he's actually a possession guy where, I mean, Michael Thomas is that, but he doesn't do the same route tree as AJ Green at this point, and AJ Green wouldn't have to always be on the field for this team. He would be a rotational piece. So I think that's a fantastic signing for them, and they have this money anyways. You could still be rolling over like $8 million to next year's cap, which is what you want. Just saying.
Right. That's true. Well, and does that account for the rookie contracts?
No, but so rookie deals predominantly are signing bonus based. Right. So the first year cap hit is generally not some extravagant number. I believe even the first overall pick's like maybe 5 million cap hit if I remember right, but they get a massive signing bonus, obviously, but it doesn't hurt their books. So this 7 million off of 19 million, they still have 12 million to play with. I think they maybe use 4, 5, 6 of that, and then you still have plenty to pick up somebody from injury or roll over some for the next year.
Okay, cool. So you give them AJ Green as we move into the mocks. We're going to finish up with team needs too. We have a lot of team needs left to go over, but I didn't give them anyone, and so I wanted to kind of pause there, do that. What are the rest of their team needs?
Okay, so quarterback. It's an obvious team need. Yes, they drafted Ian Buck last year. We saw that. Jameis has played really well. I think Andy Dalton actually played decent last year as well. So you could say the quarterback room is decent, but for the future, for that $74 million already in cap room year, it is not, in my opinion. So I think you give Jameis the full year and you have a good chance to bring in someone, whether first, middle, end of draft. I really don't give a shit. Then D tackle is the fourth biggest need for me. They have Onyemata and then Shy Tuttle. You brought in Street and Huggins. It's not really I think Onyemata's pretty decent. Tuttle played pretty well. But you could easily at least improve the rotational, if not starting pieces there. Safety, they have Marcus May and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who we both think are at least hella athletic and somewhat talented. Daniel Sorensen and Justin Evans and JT Gray, as well as PJ Williams, kind of rotating in from his cornerback position as well. They have some depth at safety, but I have this as the next biggest need because what does it hurt to give them one shot? But it depends on the board. Cornerback next, they have Lattimore, and Paulson Adebo played a ton last year and honestly played pretty decent, which is what we kind of thought he would do. Like, this is exactly what he's not going to get any better necessarily, but he plays this. PJ Williams as their slot, as well as Bradley Roby, and then Mabin, Russell, Bryce Thompson, and Jordan Miller kind of round out the cornerback room. Nothing spectacular there, but you have 4 decent corners, if not obviously Lattimore being really, really good. Linebacker, they play with 2 to 3 linebackers at a time. They have Demario Davis, who's getting older, Pete Warner, who played really well as a rookie, especially in the tackling department at least, Zach Bond, who hasn't really worked out, and then Andrew Dowell and Caden Ellish. You have those 3, and then sometimes Chauncey Gardner-Johnson kind of plays sub linebacker. That's what you have to me at the linebacking room.
Yeah, I will say too, I think Zach Bond started to play a little better last year, but it was kind of the first year, and it's been 3? That was his 3rd year.
So hopefully he takes a step forward, but Zach Bond's definitely more of a blitzing linebacker, at least at his heart. So we'll see. I still think they need to improve linebacker and maybe at least give Warner a running buddy potential of the future. Followed by that, tight end. So they have Adam Trautman, who played decent at times last year before his injury. Taysom Hill, who's always kind of a weapon. Jawan Johnson, who actually stuck out a couple games. Nick Vanette to be a blocker. And then 3 other depth pieces. I don't really care. So they have a lot of tight ends, but if they reach to get a really good one, I get it. It's just not the biggest team need to me. So it's here at the end. I just looked down and you made me angry. Interior offensive line, I have the next one. They have Andrews Pete, Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz. We're good. Forrest Lamp is your rotational guy. We're good. Besides that, Throckmorton and Cabral, I don't really care. Cesar Ruiz is your backup center and your starting right guard. I think getting another guard in the buildings or a backup center is not the worst idea. And then edge, you have 3. So it's just, if you technically have 4, Taco Charlton, and 5 was Zach Bond technically. So this why it's really down the list, but really you have Jordan Cameron, Marcus Davenport, and Peyton Turner. So getting another depth piece in there just to give another upside shot later in the draft isn't a bad idea either. And then running back, they have Kamara and Ingram, but Tony Jones Jr. and Josh Adams aren't it. They won't be it. They'll never be it. So to replace Mark Ingram for the future, it's not a bad idea to get someone that can do that.
I'm going to debate that pick that I had changed until I get there. So I'm just going to not touch it, and then I might come back to it. But no, I agree. And I agree with this order too. I think, offensive tackle and wide receiver, I may flip. I think they can make it work with the 4 pieces, the 4 other pieces. But you don't want a revolving door at left tackle either. So I get it. I just think their wide receiver there, True. I just think their wide receiver room freaking sucks, man. Callaway had some good moments last year. I think he had 800 yards, although you wouldn't guess that, with an extra game, so it's a little less impressive. I think it's
in garbage time.
Yeah.
And there was a couple weeks where he was the only receiver you could mention.
Yeah, exactly. I think Michael Thomas being back dictates that, though. So if Michael Thomas isn't there, then I think wide receiver jumps up to number 1.
But if Michael Thomas isn't there, they get another pick. So
true. Yeah, that's true. All right, it's time to do the mock drafts after talking through team needs, and I just want to remind everyone that Randy gave them AJ Green. Randy, go ahead with your mock draft, you crazy.
All right, scenario 1 that I talked about earlier, the Saints trading up to 5. I think this is a realistic possibility to get a quarterback of the future. Do I value the quarterbacks here? No, and I don't think most of the NFL does either. and most of draft Twitter, media, whatever you want to go with, we don't really value him here. But quarterbacks get moved at the board. This is going for upside, and the person that I think is best suited for upside and to sit an entire fucking season is Malik Willis. So I have the Saints trading up to the 5th overall pick. They also get a 6th-round pick from the Giants back as a kicker piece, but they trade 16 and 19. We don't have the future assets to fuck around. I'm not trading the 2nd because they're not going to take the deal. On the trade value chart, this is the Saints are giving up 1,875 and they're getting back 1,717. You have to bid up. You have to pay the tax to get into the top 5 to get ahead of the Panthers. I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't even want to kick in the 6th, but I did it because it's only worth 17 points and I wanted an extra pick because I'm greedy. But Malik Willis is the pick. He gets to sit and learn from 2 relatively journeyman quarterbacks that have made the mistakes and honestly have come out the other side pretty good. Both have had success early in the career and have had this run in the middle. So I think he could learn a lot from that room. And he does. I think he fits the city of New Orleans as well, especially with what we've seen off the field from him. I think he could learn a lot and grow in this environment. Followed it up in the 2nd round with Bernard Raymond, the offensive tackle from Central Michigan, to be your left tackle. Yes, this isn't anywhere near an exact replacement, but it's a good shot at the board. And I think he's got really good talent. He's my 5th tight end or 5th tackle. And he's here in the top of the 2nd and in the middle of the 2nd and can really do some damage and really help out this line. Sure, he's not going to be the passing game that you got from Armstead, but he can replace a lot. 3rd round, Alec Pierce, the wide receiver from Cincy, who is rising up boards after his athletic profile has come out. He's an absolute freak of nature. Again, this is like AJ Green for me, where he goes deep, but he also is a bigger body that makes plays all over the field and possession style as well. This is Ritter's favorite target. And honestly, I think this is a good fit for him to where he doesn't have to make dominant plays off the field right away, but he would easily, for me, at least be the 4th best receiver, like worst case, first day. And I think he'd be a great running mate with Michael Thomas for the future, being the deep threat while Michael Thomas does all the intermediate work. Brandon Smith in the 4th round at linebacker from Penn State. So many linebackers flying up the board and it's crazy because the top 2 are lowering on boards, and everyone that was in the 3rd through 6th has flown up to the 2nd and 3rd. Brandon Smith has stayed in the 3rd and 4th. I think he has a chance to be here because he misses a lot of tackles, and the coaches now get in the room are going to hate that. But he misses tackles with effort, and I think that's fixable and coachable, and he has the athletic profile to be player in the passing game, which is what you need with Pete Werner for the future. So this is the selection for me. 5th round, Otito Ogbania. I believe so is how you pronounce it. The defensive tackle from UCLA. This is just getting another body in the room. I think he can kind of play a couple different positions, but in the 5th round, you get a guy that has some upside that you can really flesh out his role for the future. You don't have Tuttle under contract next year because you just tendered him this year. Maybe this guy does enough for you that you don't give him a big deal in comparison to the players of his skill level, at least. But you need more help in that D-tackle room, in my opinion. 6th round pick, the first one, this one from the Giants, from the trade. I gave them Jack Jones, the corner from Arizona State. Some upside here. There's a reason he's around here. I think this is slightly late for him as well. I think he has a chance to go maybe in that 5th round pick, but I like this fit better. I think he's going to kind of fall down boards a little bit with some of these more athletic guys shooting out the boards of late. I mean, we just talked about one last week that was 7th round, and now I think he's 120th overall for most boards. So he's shot up 150 in a week for his combine, for his pro day numbers.
Zion McCollum, right? That's who
Yeah.
that was. Yeah.
Yeah, McCollum. So I think Jack Jones has a really good chance to fall here. And like I said, the cornerback room's good. So this is just getting another piece to the board. And then followed it up finally with Tyler Algier, a guy that we talked about earlier in the year. He's just falling on boards right now, man. There's like 2 or 3 running backs that have been flying up boards slightly. Namely, I would say the biggest one would probably be like Pierre Strong. And he was kind of here. He was here for this pick multiple times for me. I
That's
wasn't
wrong.
doing it. I don't. I think he's going. Maybe at 182 he goes, but I think he's probably going in the 5th round. Pierre Strong, in my opinion. I've seen mocks with him in the 3rd. So
I believe that.
Yeah, we'll see. But Tyler Algier has been falling because he's not the standout athlete, but he has the chance to be a 3-down role. And he also was a pretty decent bruiser at times. I think he's a really good replacement for the future for Mark Ingram, with some obviously seasoning sitting behind him this year and being coached up with that incredible duo leading the team. But I think he gives you a better shot than Tony Jones Jr.
I like that fit. And we talked about running backs. When I get to my running back pick, I'll kind of explain what I was thinking, but I do think that they want the Mark Ingram role, and they still have plans for Alvin Kamara to be a prominent role for them. So the narrative on Brandon Smith that he can't tackle, very true. Studied him last week. Old boy is just bad at it, and it's unfortunate because I think if you go ahead.
He's also developing into the position, though.
I think his ideal role is actually a will where he can just cover tight ends. And honestly, he has the athletic ability to maybe cover a slot receiver here and there. So,
yeah.
So I do like that pick, and I think he's going to be a good linebacker. It's just I wouldn't be shocked if he was here in the 4th round. Is what
Listen,
but
see but that's why I think he falls to the 4th, and him here in the 4th. This is one of the perfect situations for Brandon Smith. You're going to fucking learn to tackle for Demario Davis and Pete Werner. There's no fucking question. Those two tackle, especially Werner. That's pretty much all he does. He's going to learn at least to be a little bit more consistent to where he can at least be the running mate of the future.
Yeah. All right. Time to do mine. So mine's obviously very different. We've kind of alluded to that. I don't think that they want to invest high in quarterback this year. I know that all the signs kind of point to that, but I do think that they believe in Jameis. There's a reason they went and got Andy Dalton despite having Taysom Hill on the roster, and then moving Taysom Hill back to tight end. I think that they are comfortable with that as their quarterback room, at least for this year, with regard to the high pick. So my first pick is going to be Chris Olave, the wide receiver at Ohio State. I think, you said Alec Pierce walks in and he's the 4th best receiver. I think Chris Olave walks in and he is the 2nd best receiver by a pretty wide margin.
I also brought it AJ Green, though. So
that's
I was being respectful to him and Traquan.
Yeah, I guess I forgot about that. But so even if I brought in AJ Green, I think Chris Olave right now is better than AJ Green right now. So overall, I think that fit opposite Michael Thomas. I think they play such different games. And the way like a lot of scouts put it is you're building a basketball team with your wide receiver room. You want guys that can do different things. You want your center, you want your point guard. Obviously in wide receiver form, that's a little different, but Olave's your quick route. He's winning with routes, but he can also be a deep threat. He's got deep threat speed. So like that fit is 16. I didn't trade any of these, so I'm just rolling through. I switched my pick with pick 19 as we were talking here. I had Trevor Penning, but I've mocked Trevor Penning in the top 10 for the last 2 months, and so I don't think he'll be there. I just think that he's going to go with one of the top 10 picks, which is crazy to me because he's not that good. But, I think the league is lower on Charles Cross from everything that I've heard. But I don't think the Saints will be because the Saints are smart. And go ahead.
Let's put it this way. We have multiple people that are mainly do mocks with ears. One had Charles Cross outside the 1st. One being Daniel Jeremiah in his big board doesn't have him in his top 10 anymore. I don't think Charles Cross is a top 10 pick at this point.
No.
Talent wise, I think he's close.
Yeah.
Obviously being a tackle, he's pushed up the board, but it depends because maybe he's 13 to the Texans. Maybe the Ravens take him. Maybe maybe I would argue maybe the Saints take him at 16 instead of Olave, just to make sure the Chargers don't. But maybe the Chargers trade up and take Penning.
Right.
I really don't know what to do with all that.
See, I am of the mindset, and I'll explain the order of these two as well. I am of the mindset that the Chargers, I know that tackle has been like the thing, but I think they want to add to that wide receiver room with Keenan Allen getting older. I think that my first mock, I had Jamison Williams there. I think that's a crazy fit. That was also before Mike Williams signed. They do still like Jalen Guyton. They invested a third round pick in Josh Palmer, so I could see these being flipped. But I think Peter Schrager from NFL Network put out a mock, and it was just like a run of wide receivers from the 10 to 20 range, and the Chargers took one. And he's also mocking with his ears a little bit. So I think the Saints go get their wide receiver first because I think that is more the position of need. And I know we kind of don't agree there. But then Charles Cross at 19, where, he comes in, he is that pass protector. He's kind of the perfect fit for that Saints offensive line, and that they have four great starters, and he can learn on that left side next to a pretty fantastic left guard in Andrews Pete. So went there at 19. I changed the 49th pick, and Randy got mad at me. But this is also something that we've been hearing, is that Nakobe Dean is falling down boards. Teams are afraid of his size, and I think that's all they have to be afraid of because the kid is freaking good. He's my linebacker 1. But I think there's a shot that he's here at the back end of the top 50 at pick 49. And so I drafted him. If he's not here, then I think they take one of his teammates. I think Quay Walker's long gone, but I think Channing Tindall could still be there. I think Tyndall's better than Quay Walker. But for the sake of this, I gave them to Kobe Dean. I'm going to stick with it. Like I said, linebacker 1. I think he's athletic enough to play in coverage. I think he sheds blocks incredibly well, despite being an undersized guy. He's got a really good nose for the football, really good tackler. Would be awesome to learn behind Demario Davis for a year and kind of be that rotational middle linebacker. Then I followed it up at pick 98. This is my running back pick. I initially gave them Zamir White. I think I've done 2 straight weeks of drafting Zamir White to someone, and I've kind of learned that Zamir White is one of my favorite prospects in the draft. But this time I'm going to give the Saints a running back here in the 3rd, pick 98, Dameon Pierce, running back out of Florida. One of my original favorites. And when I started studying, I think he's a bursty little dude. I think that he could rotate in with Ingram, and I think that he might overtake Ingram as that RB2 type of role for the Saints this year.
It's also a nice he's better than Algier in the what if Kamara's out 2 games because of this incident. So right. I think he gives enough juice early on.
Yeah, true. Then with pick 120 in the 4th round, I gave them Tariq Castro Fields, the corner out of Penn State. Long, fast, probably steps in and is your CB5, but also I think he could give you some stuff on special teams. He also might be better than Bradley Roby at this stage and could fight for that. He does have some issues in coverage, I think specifically zone, but the Saints don't play a whole lot of that. So I feel good about that fit. 5th round, pick 161. I gave them Romeo Doubs, the wide receiver out of Nevada. I doubled up on receiver. I think their wide receiver room is that bad. I think they clearly don't have a ton of faith in Traquan Smith, just with the lack of money that they gave him. And I obviously think that the NFL feels the same way. So I think that what they would try to do is get another deep threat for Jameis Winston, and I think Doubs is that. I think he's going to go win balls down the field for you. He's not going to separate early. He's kind of the polar opposite of Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. So gave them, and I think he offers some in special teams too. So we're just adding depth here. And then pick 194 here in the 6th round. I didn't want to get out of this draft without a quarterback, despite the Ian Book pick last year. I don't care about that. So I gave them Caleb Ellaby, the quarterback out of Western Michigan. He's a guy that I feel is pretty good. I feel like he's slid down boards a little bit, not as athletic as people thought, but I think he's a little bit undersized, but I do like the body of work. I question, he ran a lot of RPO stuff, and I don't know how much of the field he knows how to read, but it's a shot in the 6th round, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't work out. So, and that's it. Those are all the picks.
Sorry, I was fighting off you on there. Yeah, it's the third option. Maybe it's not how I prioritize the needs, but like the 49 with Dean, if he's on the board somehow, which shouldn't fucking happen, but we saw the same thing with JOK last year with the Browns, where except they actually needed linebacker. The Saints don't really need a starting linebacker necessarily like Dean, but we'll see. I mean, it couldn't hurt to have him. Like, it physically could not hurt to have Nakobe Dean on that team.
Right.
Ridiculous.
And I will say, like I said, if he's gone, I like this linebacker class. I think Chad Muma would be a shout here. I think that would be a nice fit. Well, but I think Dean going makes more sense because he's BPA at that point too.
Yeah, but that's what my point was, though. I think if Dean's not there, I don't think they take linebacker at that spot because of what they already have at the position. I think they need more depth for this year necessarily than starter, but that's way too good to pass up.
I did debate Sam Howell here, but I don't think he's there either.
There's a chance someone's going to be there between Sam Howell,
Matt Corral, Carson Strong.
Matt Corral, Ritter, Strong.
Ritter's not going to be there.
Strong's going to be there. Ritter may not. But, especially fucking 49, 52 is the Steelers. You might be taking one there. Like, we'll see. We'll see where the quarterbacks land. So,
yeah, for sure. All right. Vastly different approaches, but overall the goal is to make the team better, and I think that we both did that in our different ways. So, all right. Any parting thoughts on the New Orleans Saints?
I'm curious which of the 3 routes they're going. I really don't know.
Me too.
Because we basically got a week of smoke that they wanted to move up, and then they kind of did.
Right.
So I really don't know what to do with that information.
Well, and that's why, I think the whole goal was to just get in front of the Chargers. Now, what that means, now these teams traditionally kind of know where, at least what position every team is drafting. Remember the Eagles drafting Jalen Reagor and the Vikings laughing? It's because the Vikings knew they were picking a wide receiver, thought they weren't going to have Justin Jefferson, and then they got Justin Jefferson.
They were already off the board. They were the literal war room videos, them switching positions. Like, okay, well, corner. Let's go corner here. Who's our best corner on the board? They're like,
right.
Jalen. Oh my fucking god, Justin Jefferson, please.
Yeah, so most of these teams know. They do talk. I know people make fun of draft day, but that is how things go sometimes.
Yes, and there's a lot of inside and then predictions, and we recently saw the Matt Rule video from last year where he correctly predicted basically the top 5 picks before him, or 6 or 7, whatever, 8 picks. And he's like, okay, well, this is how it's going. It could be one of these 2, and then we pick here. So what do we want here?
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of, that's the case. I think they needed to get in front of the Chargers for that, whatever that means. We don't know that either, though. That's the problem. So, all right. That'll do it for the Friday fix of the New Orleans Saints. However, we do have a few minutes left for Marvel Talk. So, Moon Knight episode 2 came out this Wednesday, and it was freaking fantastic. I actually liked it better than the first episode, which I don't think is a you did too. Okay. I thought that was kind of a hot take. So
you actually, well, what my main concerns of last week was, it was confusing for people that didn't know the actual character stuff, which it always would be, but I thought there was a lack of action because of the cutting between the characters, not showing us that. We've got to see that this week a little bit, and got to learn a little bit of how it happens, who Mark is, and his life and what's going on. You learned a dick ton in episode 2, and you got to see a little bit of action, which is cool. And you got to see different Moon Knight suits.
Yes. Yeah, that was the cool part. I also think you found out Arthur's motivation. Harrow, is
Yes.
that his name? Harrow. Um, you find out his motivation for the scarab and things like that. I was just massively impressed with this episode. I know a lot of people are upset because it is not at all what Moon Knight is in the comics. They are doing their own adaptation. I think that's good. I think they let Oscar Isaac kind of go, and he is going, and he is going in a fantastic way. Just his
Yeah.
acting is incredible. My gripe is like there's a part where there's like a demi dog, like a demon dog.
Jackal.
Yeah, so
It's a
is that the
jackal.
same?
Jackal.
Is,
It's a
is
jackal.
that the
Jackal.
same? Is that the same thing though?
Yeah,
In this episode from the first episode?
I believe so. Yeah, they're
Yeah, you're
called.
probably right.
No, they're called jackals.
Okay, so the jackal looks like shit. Like what? Like the CGI on it is like, wow, that looks like it's from the 2000s to me.
Yeah, I thought it was weird. So I also say like they kind of. It was mainly in the shadows, and then it was also like not on screen for majority of it. So I
Yeah,
think they probably just didn't try that hard on it.
yeah, I agree. I think the Moon Knight, the official Moon Knight suit, like the transition from Mark to the suit was one of the coolest moments in the
Yeah,
show
it's
so
very good.
far. Uh, Big fan of that. Overall, this show is fantastic. I know there's
Yeah.
a lot of people that are kind of hating on it. That is crazy to me. I think this is so far through 2 episodes, it's the best outside of Loki. I think Loki was better.
Uh, I don't
Personally,
know how I'd categorize them like for first two. I'd honestly say that uh like for Hawkeye we probably got more information by now. But
true.
that's saying a lot because this episode fucking dumped you in the face with like so much information about the
Yeah,
character and then like we said the plot and different backgrounds for different characters and motivations. So like this gave us so much and obviously they're now woken up in Egypt and everything. Which was it? Steven was in charge then, right? I couldn't really
no,
tell. I thought it was still Mark, but I was like, it's like the way they opened the curtains, it was like, where the hell am I kind of thing. But Mark
right,
would do that. So that's why I was a little confused. But he could have just been, okay, what's out there, you know?
right. Yeah, I think the opening of the curtain was just for us, honestly, because
Yeah,
I
I
think
know. But it doesn't fit the character. That's why I was like, is that Steven? Am I wrong?
unless he was showing Steven where they were, since Steven was in the mirror,
Yeah,
um,
maybe.
he could have been doing that because he got mad at Steven. There might have been an F bomb in this episode. So the way Oscar Isaac says "shut up" at one point makes it sound like he says "shut the F up," and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
If you go back and watch it, I don't know if it's been edited because the internet does that, but uh, great episode. I am very excited to see where this goes. The next 2 episodes are going to be just as crazy from what I've heard.
Yeah,
So.
it's I mean I'm really excited to see if it like ramps up somehow from this, but I think we're gonna get a kind of massive, in a sense, holy war because it is Egyptian gods and
Right.
they're like avatars fighting basically at this point.
Yeah.
But obviously one is kind of by themselves with a wife, and then one has like an entire village of like worshippers.
Crazy people. Yeah, crazy
Well,
people.
I mean, it's crazy people, but apparently they're really good people because they didn't die. But
That's true.
that's also a question because like we saw them test people randomly to see if they would be bad, and then they
Yeah.
were.
Well, that's the thing. I don't trust her judgment, Ahmed's judgment. So
It's
I think
it's
we're
iffy,
gonna
but
find
I don't know if the other one's better. So we'll see.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. All right, that'll do it for this episode of The Cut. Make sure you guys, if you're listening to this on podcast form, make sure you guys subscribe. If you're following on Twitter or YouTube, make sure you subscribe there or turn on tweet notifications. We will be back on Monday for defensive line rankings.
I believe.
I have a lot of edges to continue watching this weekend because they're about 25 to 30 deep. Yeah, we've got time.
Yeah.
We're fine.
No, we don't.
We have got 45 seconds. All right, we need
In
to
an
go.
outro.
Yeah, that's true. So, all right. Anything else to add?
No.
All right. For Randy Hall, I'm Christian Williams. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. Later.